Welcome to The Story. I'm Tim Gordon in for Pat Doris tonight. You know, we talk a lot about local infrastructure on this show, things like the new I-5 bridge project and the likelihood of tolling on Oregon's roads delayed until 2026, for those of you worried about it. One project that we have not checked in on in a while is a massive freeway project near downtown Portland. It's our big story tonight. The I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project landed back in the headlines this week when a coalition of local activist groups sued the Oregon Department of Transportation to try to stop the project, or at least some of it. The project would expand a 1-mile stretch of I-5, adding more lanes, widening shoulders, and relocating some exit ramps. ODOT says the corridor's current design makes it a regional bottleneck and a high crash area. Crews would also add a cover on top of the freeway, sometimes called a cap or a lid, essentially turning that section of I-5 into a tunnel. Well, the project's opponents have environmental objections to widening the freeway, but they actually like the cap idea. In fact, they want ODOT to split the project in two, ditch the widening, and move forward with just the cover. Well, this all comes at a time when the cover piece has been getting a lot of attention. A few months ago, ODOT announced the federal government would provide $450 million earmarked for just the cover from a program called Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods, or RCN. Yes, that's a lot of money, but not nearly enough for the whole plan. Just last year, ODOT announced the project was essentially dead in the water due to a $1.3 billion budget gap. Setting aside the lawsuit for a moment, some questions about the plan remain, like where will the rest of that money come from? What happens if ODOT can't come up with it? And perhaps most important, is any of this ever actually going to be built? Well, to answer those questions, let's break down how we got here. Then we can dig into what might happen next. So let's wind back the clock to 2017. That's when the Oregon legislature got ODOT an initial pot of funding for the Rose Quarter and directed the agency to develop a plan to raise more money by tolling Portland freeways. Back then, ODOT's design for the Rose Quarter only included a couple of very small covers, but local advocates and elected officials were thinking bigger. They wanted the project to fix a historical wrong. Portland's Albina neighborhood was once a thriving black community, and I-5 tore it in half. You can see the damage when you compare aerial photos of that area from 1948 and from 1960. Well, the group Albina Vision Trust and other advocates wanted the Rose Quarter project to reconnect the neighborhood with a much longer cover built strong enough to support new buildings on top. In 2022, ODOT agreed to switch to the bigger cover, but the added scope of the project and pandemic-era inflation pushed the cost way up. The original estimate in 2017 was $450 million. The current estimate is between $1.5 and $1.9 billion. So the financial situation got even worse last year when Governor Tina Kotek ordered a pause on all tolling until 2026, leaving the Rose Quarter in limbo. Kotek then took it a step further, scrapping the entire plan to toll Portland freeways earlier this year, though it's worth noting that tolling is definitely still on the table for the future. That $450 million RCN grant we told you about earlier came through at around the same time earlier this year. And ODOT was quick to declare that that was enough to get the Rose Quarter plan, well, back up and running. Even though the federal money can only be used on the cover and the overall project is still about, well, $1 billion short. So what happens next? We got some answers at an Oregon Transportation Commission meeting earlier this month. ODOT officials explained they're trying to make up for the lost tolling revenues by applying for a $750 million grant from a separate federal program called Infra. They laid out 3 scenarios. Number 1, they don't get the Infra grant and have to make do with the RCN money alone. ODOT officials said that would mean they'd have enough money to build the portion of the cover south of the Broadway, but not much else. Construction would start that way in 2027. Number 2, they don't get the Infra grant, but they do get a smaller new source of revenue sometime soon, like more money from the state legislature. In that case, officials said the priority would be to get the full cover done, with most of the freeway upgrades still dropped. And number 3, they get the full Infra grant, in which case they can afford to do the cover, the extra lanes, the works. In ODOT's words, quote, the full enchilada. Well, ODOT expects to hear back on the Infra grant the next month and will come back with updated options later in the fall. And oh yeah, about that lawsuit, Project opponents are moving forward, arguing the project was improperly fast-tracked through the environmental review process.
Win in this case would be to pause the project and do a full environmental impact statement, and importantly, analyze other alternatives. So we'd like to look at a transit alternative, we'd like to look at a pricing alternative, we would like to look at a less expensive alternative.
Again, they want ODOT to ditch the extra lanes, that full enchilada, and build just the cover alone, which actually kind of sounds like what ODOT is saying it'll have to do if the infra grant doesn't work out. ODOT officials made it clear they still want to build the whole thing, but could the project's opponents end up getting their wish simply due to budget constraints? Well, it's not that simple, really. Even in ODOT's scenario 1, where they can only afford to build part of the cover, their plan still includes widening and deepening the freeway corridor underneath, which would allow for the rest of the project to be built at some point later. Joe Courtwright with the group City Observatory had harsh words for ODOT about that plan of action.
So in effect, scenario 1 is a bait and switch. You represented to the federal government that you would have a deluxe version of covers that would cover a much larger area, and you got $450 million, the largest grant in the country. And now you're proposing paring that back to just a fraction of the area that you said you would cover, and then spending the RCN money, the money the federal government gave you for covers, on widening the freeway.
Still, the cover has gone from being a small add-on in 2017 to a top priority now in 2024. It's fair to say that at least part of a cover will happen. As for that full enchilada, well, time will tell. What are your thoughts on the Rose Quarter Improvement Plan? Even if you don't drive it yourself very much, it is obviously a major economic artery through town. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail 503-226-5090. New details tonight on Multnomah County's deflection plan. Once possession of hard drugs is a crime again in September, if someone is caught with drugs, are not committing any other crimes, and have no warrants, they will be eligible for deflection to try and connect with treatment instead of getting jail time. Blair Best is outside of the county's deflection center in the Central East Side with an update.
Multnomah County just released a draft plan for its deflection center, located in this building off Southeast Sandy Boulevard. The plan comes just 2 weeks before it's scheduled to open on September 1st, the day drug possession becomes a crime again in Oregon. The plan's major takeaway? Security. 2 guards will be at the site 24/7, costing the county $740,000 for the first 10 months. More security will patrol the block and call 911 if they see an emergency.
As far as I'm concerned, it's pretty much a fig leaf, a lot of kind of empty language, but no real substance.
David Watnick is an attorney representing a preschool about 450 feet from the center and outside the area covered by security. Earlier this month, Watnick wrote to the county on behalf of the school, demanding they delay opening the center, arguing it could create an unsafe environment for the children, including his own, who attend the school.
We are prepared to file a lawsuit to get a court order blocking the opening on September 1 if the county intends to do that and doesn't make really significant changes.
I'm dismayed. I'm frustrated.
This week, Multnomah County Commissioner Sharon Myron called for a 90-day delay.
We are supposed to open in 2.5 weeks. We do not have a safety plan in place. We do not have operational plans in place.
The county admits the September 1st deadline is tight, repeatedly calling it a challenge.
What the community should know is that Multnomah County is planning on launching its plan as long as everything is ready and that all the questions are answered.
But they're not. For one thing, construction is still underway. A paint crew was there Friday morning, and a signed good neighbor agreement won't be ready in time.
The county is moving at breakneck speed to be ready on September 1st.
All to help people like this man.
Everybody likes to get high. Everybody.
Yet he doesn't see deflection as a way out.
He's only choosing the treatment because he's preventing himself to go into jail. So after he's done doing treatment, he's going to be back out here doing the same thing again.
Well, Blair joins me now from outside the center. Blair, security is a major issue for the surrounding community. What else does the plan touch on?
The plan also touches on what happens once people get here to the center that's behind me. They can't stay for very long, less than 24 hours, and they can't bring their pets, but there is places to store their belongings. But I can tell you from my time reporting on the streets, not being able to bring their animals could be a roadblock for some people. The draft plan also talks about transportation. It'll be up to law enforcement or county staff to transport people to and from the center by cabs or by law enforcement vehicles. And they're doing that to try and prevent people from setting up camp in this neighborhood. But I got to tell you, there are already camps set up in this area. Take a look. There's a site right down here at the end of this block. But that is part of the reason the county chose this area for the deflection center, because it's an area where there's need.
Yep, and you can see it right there, Blair. Hey, what about the impending lawsuit if the county opens on September 1st, which it sounds like they're working toward?
Yeah, that's right. But before we get to that, I want to show you just how close this preschool is to the deflection center. So we're going to go for a walk. The deflection center was behind us there. The Soho house is on my left. But back to the lawsuit. You heard it there. The preschool will sue the county come September 1st if they don't come up with a more robust security system, security plan. And, you know, I asked the county spokesperson about that today, and they really didn't seem fazed at the threat of an impending lawsuit. I also want to mention the center is still under construction, and the draft plan says that they will not have time, it won't be open in time for service providers to go on tours and to really get familiar with the center itself. All right, so we've walked about a block, and as you can see, the preschool is that red building there. Hopefully you can see behind this road work ahead sign. But there's the preschool, that red building covered in ivy. That's how close it is to the deflection center. So there's major safety concerns for students. Parents just aren't convinced that the plan, the security plan outlined in that draft, is enough to keep their kids safe.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty close. So what's next for the plan?
So next week, county commissioners will review the plan and they'll vote on it on a later date. But I also want to add that the county chair has agreed to add Commissioner Sharon Myron's resolution to delay this whole thing for 90 days to next week's agenda. So we'll be watching.
Yeah, we will, and you've got it covered. Blair, thanks a lot. Up next on the story, we could get a soaking rain this weekend, certainly out of the norm for this time of year. Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino is waiting in the wings with your latest forecast on our next Weather Impact Alert Day when the story returns. Welcome back. You know, we don't often talk about the weather here on The Story, but tomorrow is a weather impact alert day. That's why we've got Chief Meteorologist Matt Safino here to tell us more about the rain that's on the way. And also, Matt, you're going to talk about how this cooler week that we've had compares to our averages this time of year.
Yeah, it's interesting to dig into that because a lot of that is perception. So we'll get into that in a minute, but I want to talk about what's happening tomorrow because it won't look like this. Mount Hood is beaming brightly. We'll be watching our sky cams closely all day tomorrow, especially to the south, because there is a significant threat of thunderstorms, and some of those could be strong enough to be classified as severe, especially in this area that's highlighted in yellow. But all of Western Oregon and the Cascades and into Central Oregon under the threat for thunderstorms tomorrow, especially in the afternoon. So it's going to be a very different day. This is the culprit, this area of low pressure. This is very moisture-rich air. This is dry air behind it. There's a good jet stream involved here, and it's all moving closer to the coast right now. So we're good tonight. It'll be clear tonight. We'll actually still be mainly sunny in the morning, but the warmer we get tomorrow, the more intense those storms will become because the heating of the ground and the air will actually help to get those thunderstorms and showers really ramped up. So look at this rainfall forecast. Now, this is just one of several models that we look at to forecast the weather, but this one is interesting and potentially very representative of how the day will go. The exact amounts may change and the hour, the timing of this may change. But what I want to point out is this. We go from no rain at 5 o'clock to about 1/4 of an inch at 6 o'clock. So that's rainfall rates of 1/4 of an inch an hour. That's not severe, but that's pretty good, especially for summer. And then from 7 to 8, we get 4/10 of an inch of rain in an hour. Now, that's enough to cause some minor flooding or flash flooding if it happens up in the Cascades over some recent burn scars. So that's a concern up there. And you can see, though, that we get these just big chunks of rain indicating that we're going to have the kind of rainfall that comes with showers and thunderstorms that can be very, very intense, then back off for a bit and then become very, very intense again. So the early part of the day is fine, but in the afternoon, that's the weather impact alert time. Showers and thunderstorms will develop in the afternoon and spread from south-southeast to north-northwest. I think this is all going to morph into just a rainy Saturday night as the storms may settle down a bit, but the rainfall will continue. So again, a really different day. So let's look at lightning and the different types of lightning that we have because it's somewhat interesting. You can get lightning that just goes cloud to air. That's known as a step leader. That's really quite common. As the leader nears the ground, it draws up a positive charge, and then you end up getting a lightning strike that makes contact like that. But there's all different kinds of lightning that can happen here, and that's the process that lightning happens, and that happens in about less than a second. But you can also get lightning that happens in the cloud. We call that intra-cloud lightning. That's very, very common. Cloud to cloud doesn't happen all that frequently, but it does happen. Cloud to sky, you see that occasionally. And photographers, get your cameras ready because there could be a show for us tomorrow night. These are the ones that we're really concerned about in terms of wildfire because those positive polarity cloud to ground that happen outside of the shaft of rain, they tend to be very strong and they're happening with no rain. Those can start wildfires very easily. So we do keep a look on that, and we can tell the polarity of lightning strike with our lightning sensors that we have. So this is interesting too. Lightning deaths by location, right? Look at all the locations with the high amounts. Outside in the yard, a field, outside in the open here. Under a tree, not a good place to be if there's a lightning storm. So just a little bit of lightning safety for you. The safe places in your car, in a home, even a parking lot, anywhere where you can get cover. You don't want to be caught outside when lightning happens. So tomorrow, hail, downpours, and lightning. Again, it's a weather impact alert day. You need to drive carefully because we could get some ponding of water in some of the low-lying intersections and the like. Now, Tim, what was the other question you had?
We're talking about the temperatures, cooler week we had.
Yes, that's right.
What about that?
So, you know, this was brought up to me yesterday. I was like, has it really been cooler? So today is the 16th of August. Only 6 of our days this month have we had temperatures that were below average. So I think what happened is this. We came off a record hot July. Portland and Salem, that was the average temperature. Hottest July we've ever had. 8 of the 10 hottest Julys have all been since 2009, if you want to talk climate change. And the last below average July we had in Portland was way back in 2012. We hit 100 a few times during the month of July. We started August with a 99-degree day. But suddenly in the last week, we've had 4 or 5 days with high temperatures below average. And I think it's just that change that has caught people's attention because our average for the month of August is actually still way above the mean.
Yeah, and it was kind of a nice respite. Actually, I enjoyed the cooler days.
Oh, it's been great.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot, Matt.
You bet.
Appreciate it. Well, up next on The Story, the final installment of our series this week on killer whales in the Northwest. Experts say extinction is a real possibility, but so is saving the species. How long could that take? And what needs to be done? We'll explain when The Story returns. Well, the KGW School Supply Drive is going on right now, and one of the best ways you can help is to give online. And it's super easy. Go to kgw.com/school and click Donate Cash. Or if you'd like to drop off some school supplies in person, some of the team will be at Washington Square Mall from noon to 4 on Saturday tomorrow. Plus, all this week, for every $1 donated at any On Point branch, they'll donate $5, making your donation go even farther, and that's great. We want to thank On Point Community Credit Union, Safeway, and Rick's Custom Fencing for everything they're doing this year to make this year's supply drive a big success. And now to the third and final part of our Environment Northwest series this week, focused on efforts to save southern resident orcas in the Northwest. A new study shows the killer whales are on a fast track to extinction. Meteorologist Leah Pizzetti looks at how long it could take to reverse the decline and save the species.
If we didn't change anything today, given the current circumstances, would we be able to save this population?
If we do nothing, we will lose this population forever.
Right now, there are exactly 74 southern resident killer whales, a decrease of 24 since the 90s.
Around here, they're iconic, so we all get our hopes up when there's a new calf. We all grieve collectively when one dies. We know when the population goes up or down by one individual.
Rob Williams, co-founder of nonprofit Oceans Initiative, has devoted his career to studying orcas. Oh my God. He says a goal of 2.3% growth per year for 28 years was set, hoping to get the population totals back into the 90s. Instead, over the last 30 years, there's been a decline of 1.5% every year. The Center of Whale Research estimates there were about 98 orcas in the mid-90s to the now 74.
So this has been decades in the making?
Yes.
Why has it taken so long to correct it?
The first problem is that you have to quantify how big the problem is, and it takes decades of science.
So that's what Rob is doing. He and a team of 17 scientists recently published a study digging into the data to see what the reality of population recovery actually looks like. Williams says of the 74 southern resident orcas right now, about half are female. A portion of those are either too old or too young to reproduce. That leaves about a dozen female orcas carrying the population. With a 17-month gestation period, each would only have a calf every 3 to 5 years, and historically speaking, about half of calves die, so they won't all make it. This means that with the assumption that older whales are also dying during this time frame, it would take 50 years to grow the population by 15 to 20 whales.
So we have to manage our expectation that we didn't get into this situation overnight, and it will take a long, long time for us to recover.
This research also looks at the causes of this decline. Williams says the top factor is a lack of food, Chinook salmon specifically. Second, noise contamination. Whales use acoustic sounds to listen for salmon and hunt. Too many boats and noises make it hard for them to feed. And third, contaminants like plastic and forever chemicals in the food they do eat.
What should we do?
Well, the whales are telling us that they need a lot more salmon.
This, he suggests, could come down to reducing Chinook salmon harvest, increasing hatchery production, or stopping catching Chinook salmon in the open ocean to leave them for the orcas.
What happens if we lose this population?
I don't even want to think about losing this population. I can't imagine the Salish Sea, the Pacific Northwest, without our iconic killer whales and Chinook salmon. We've seen this in cases from California to Alaska, that if you remove the top predators, the lower trophic levels, the system collapses like a house of cards.
And that system is our oceans.
That's our Salish Sea. That's what we call home.
So it is possible to help. We just have to actually do it.
I think the number one thing I want people to learn from this study is that populations have bounced back from much, much more severe genetic bottlenecks than this.
And that is the hope. For Environment Northwest, I'm meteorologist Leah Pizzetti.
Well, scientists say policy change is key. And in the meantime, state leaders say tens of millions of dollars slated for salmon rehabilitation will be lost if a ballot initiative passes this fall. It's one we've told you about. It's Initiative 2117, which repeals the state's Climate Commitment Act. That law has become controversial because the carbon tax that it includes has raised gas prices. So we'll see what happens come November. All right, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. Pat is set to be back with you on Monday night, right here at 6:30. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend and get ready for tomorrow's rain.